Internal Revenue Service IRS tax news. Economic impact payments on their way. Visit IRS.gov instead of calling. IR 2020-01, January 4th, 2021, Washington. The Internal Revenue Service today urged people to visit IRS.gov, IRS.gov, the IRS website, for the most current information on the second round of economic impact payments rather than calling the agency or their financial institutions or tax software providers. So they're trying to lead people, of course, to get the information from the website directly so you don't clog up basically the phone lines, which are probably going to be at less capacity than usual at this time due to the social distancing rules for COVID-19. So the IRS phone assistors do not have additional information beyond what's available on IRS.gov, IRS.gov. The IRS and the Treasury Department began issuing a second round of economic impact payments, often referred to as stimulus payments, last week. The direct deposit payments may take several days to post to individual accounts. Some Americans may have seen the direct deposit payments as pending or as provisional payments to their accounts before the scheduled payment date of January 4th, 2021, which is the official date funds are available. Paper checks also began going out and will continue to be sent through January. Some people will be mailed debit cards in January, and the IRS urges people to carefully check their mail. Mail payments will require more processing and mailing time. So obviously we have the second round of the economic impact payments here. If you received the first round of economic impact payments, then most likely you would be getting the second round. They kind of lined it up in a similar fashion for the similar requirements in order to receive it. And they should have all of the information if you received the first one to send it to you. If they have the banking information, then it should be the electronic kind of transfer. If they do not and they mail it to you, then you may receive a check or you might get this debit card item, and that could change from the last thing you got. In other words, you might have got a check last time and this time they give you a debit card, or you might have got a debit card last time and this time they give you a check. So there might not be this exact same method there, but in essence, they're mailing out either a check or debit card. And if you got it mailed out last time, then it's probably going out in the mail this time. If you had an electronic transfer into the account, then that will most likely be the same process for the current one as well. So those who reside abroad will have longer wait times for checks as disruptions to air travel and mail delivery in some countries will slow delivery. The IRS emphasizes that there is no action required by eligible individuals to receive this second payment, so there should be nothing you need to do at this point in time. And all those kind of issues with the first round of economic impact payments, in telling people in those situations where the IRS wasn't sure, didn't have the tax return, and they were trying to get people to sign up to tell them the information necessary, possibly for dependents, or if they didn't file their tax returns in the prior year. That stuff all should have happened, hopefully, at this point in time, or as much as it's going to happen for the prior stimulus payments. So this round, then they're going to depend on the information that they compiled from that last round. And then if there's still errors that are going to be involved here in either the first or second round, I believe those are going to be trying to take care of in 2020, or when the 2020 tax returns are filed in 2021. So if there are any problems with the first or second round of economic impact payments, then you would think that you can reconcile that problem, meaning getting paid the difference between what you should have been paid and what you actually got, with the use of the filing of the 2020 tax return in 2021 with what is called now the recovery rebate credit. Now, this second stimulus payment just going out here at the end of the year is a little bit confusing in terms of the recovery rebate credit, how that will look. So I'm not sure the software providers at this point in time have updated for the second one, but you would think they got it out kind of in time to tie it to the 2020 tax return. And then that means that if there's any problems, then you can reconcile those problems with the recovery rebate credit when filing the tax return in 2020 or for 2020 tax year in 2021. So the payments are automatic, and people should not contact their financial institutions or the IRS with payments timing questions. So the IRS they're basically saying here the IRS phone lines are not going to give you much information about this at this point in time beyond what we're basically saying here. So eligibility. Generally, U.S. citizens and resident aliens who are not eligible to be claimed as a dependent on someone else's income tax return are eligible for this second payment. So eligible individuals will automatically receive an economic impact payment of up to $600 for individuals and $1,200 for married couples and up to $600 for each qualifying child. So the same kind of process that we had last time. And that's going to be by design, of course, because that makes it a lot easier to send out the second checks in the same type of fashion. So basically everyone, in essence, with a TIN number or a social security number, you basically should get the economic impact payment. There could be AGI phase out. So if you're over a certain limit of income, then it might phase out and lower it. And so this time, so that means that's going to be, of course, $600 per person per social security number. If married filing joint, then because you're one taxable entity in some ways of thinking of it, you'd get twice that, right? You'd get the $1,200 for basically the two people that are filing a married filing joint tax return. And then married couples and up to $600 for each qualifying child. And that's kind of nice here because notice what they did not do. Last time they had the $1,200 for individuals, and you got a lesser amount for the qualifying child, like the childs were worth, less. So they were worth the $500 versus the $1,200. The fact that it's the same amount is going to be, I think it's probably smarter because that won't incentivize people to basically, try to file a separate return or something like that. So as you got the $600 possibly for the qualifying child, but remember the qualifying child would be a child that would be under the 17, so they had to keep that kind of same rule so that they can follow the same template that they had for the last economic impact payments to issue this one out. So we still have that kind of issue where people that are over 17 that are being claimed as a dependent on someone else's tax return, which could be students, for example, that are going to school, or possibly older individuals, parents, grandparents that possibly are claimed as a dependent. They may not, get the economic impact payment, whereas if they were to be filing independently, they may then get, the economic impact payment, which means you might end up with some people that were dependents in the prior year that might be filing as not a dependent, and if that was the case, they may be eligible for a recovery rebate credit. So in any case, most people who have an adjusted gross income in 2019 of up to $75,000 for individuals and up to $150,000 for married couples filing joint returns and surviving spouses will receive the full amount of the second payment. For filers with income above those amounts, the payment amount is reduced. So for 2019 filers, these are going to be the limits that will happen, and then your economic impact payments will be reduced as you go past those limits. Now that might be, if your limits are different for 2020, then there may be an adjustment. You may want to keep your information for see if there's a recovery rebate credit situation in that situation. So checking the status of a payment. Starting today, people can check the status of both their first and second payments by using the Get My Payment tool available in English and Spanish only on IRS.gov. There's a link to the Get My Payment tool here. Payment not received or less than expected, claim on 2020 tax return. So payments started going out last week and will continue through mid-January. Direct deposit payments are being made first to those that have valid routing and account information on file for direct deposit purposes. So the people that have that they're trying to push this direct deposit type of thing, so they can send out the payments directly, and it's also easier for the IRS. So they're kind of processing those first, and that also allows them to kind of claim that their success first, right? We sent all this money out already. We're doing a great job, right? So that the money that they can get out the door as efficiently and as fast as possible first off is probably going to be the first money out the door, which means the electronic payments. So because of the speed at which the IRS issued the second round of payments, some payments may have been sent to an account that may be closed or no longer active. So it's possible, they based it on the prior account that had been opened, and if it was closed, then, they sent it to a closed account. By law, the financial institution must return the payment to the IRS. They cannot hold and issue the payment to an individual when the account is no longer active. So if you try to go back to the account and say, hey, my payment should have gone to this account, but it's closed now. Could you just basically give me the payment? You know, that the institution probably will not be able to do that. They're going to say, no, I'm going to kick it back to the IRS. The IRS will get it back. And in that situation, you're probably going to have to file a 2020 tax return in 2021 in order to claim the recovery rebate credit would most likely be the remedy. So while the IRS is exploring options to correct these payments, if you have not received your full payment by the time you file your 2020 tax return, you may claim the recovery rebate credit on your tax return. So remember, the recovery rebate credit is basically the reconciliation of any problems that happened with either the first or second round of the economic impact payments. So you didn't, in other words, you didn't get the full amount of the first or second round of economic impact payments, either because the IRS didn't have the proper information or because there's been changes from the prior year to the current year in the requirement obligations, and therefore you may be able to pick up the recovery rebate credit. But to do so, you would have to file the 2020 tax return. Even if you're not normally required to file, you want to do that so you can pick up the recovery rebate credit to reconcile the difference between the economic impact payment you should have got and the one that you did get if there was a difference. So the credit is figured like the economic impact payment, except that the credit eligibility and credit amount are based on 2020 tax year information, including income. So now we got the 2020 information that they're going to base the economic impact payment. So notice what the problems could be where you might get a credit here. Like, for example, if in the prior year you had you did not have a dependent on 2019, and now you have another dependent in 2020 that's a qualifying child, then that could increase both the first and second round economic impact payments that you would have. If in the prior year you were claimed as a dependent by somebody else, either a student that was over 17 or possibly an older person that was claimed in some way, and if you were not claimed in 2020. You would think maybe then you would be eligible for possibly the economic impact payment, which would now for 2020, which means you may be eligible for the recovery rebate credit at that point. Also, you can see situations where in 2019 people had incomes that were fairly high. They were above the threshold where the income phase out might have happened. And then in 2020, many industries could have gotten completely crushed. So their income would be well under possibly the threshold to receive the full amount. So some people may have gotten, lesser. I'm sure people got lesser amounts because their AGI limitation in 2019, and then they won't have that AGI limitation in 2020. And so that could possibly be another situation where you would qualify for a recovery rebate credit. So this is all kind of new stuff, but it should be fairly easy to calculate on the 2020 software. If you have software to calculate it, you can do it without the software too. But, so we'll have to see once the forms are finalized. This last economic impact payment complicated things a little bit, but you can kind of see how this will work. So in any case, for people who received a partial economic impact payment, they can take the recovery rebate credit for any remaining amount they're eligible for by completing line 30 of the 2020 Form 1040 or 1040 SR. So it's going to be line 30 on the Form 1040. So when you get your 1040, you can just check one out on the IRS.gov website. Just type in 1040. You can take a look at line 30. You can look at the instructions for the 1040, which should help you to do that calculation as well. Also, of course, software helps to do the calculation. There is free software as well for people that are under a threshold. Oftentimes there are options to have access to preparation software through the IRS website. So if you look up IRS.gov and you look up tax preparation software, free software, then you might find some options there as well. So change bank account or mailing information. The IRS cannot change payment information, including bank account or mailing information. If an eligible taxpayer does not get a payment or it is less than expected, it may be claimed on the 2020 tax return as the recovery rebate credit. Remember, the economic impact payments are an advance payment of what will be called the recovery rebate credit on the 2020 Form 1040 or for 1040 SR. So notice the economic impact payment then is really tied to the 2020 tax returns, which haven't been filed because they're not going to be filed till 2021. So they're basically an advance of what's going to be called the recovery rebate credit. So the recovery rebate credit is going to be calculated then, it looks like here, on the 2020 tax return. In 2021, but they had to base the advance, which they're calling the economic impact payment, on prior year information. In this case, 2019 for the second one. If they didn't have that for the first one, they might have gone back to 2018 for that. And that's why there could be this discrepancy of your eligibility in the actual tax year it's applied to, 2020, and the tax year that they based the prepayment on, or the estimate of it on, 2019 tax year or 2018. So more information about the economic impact payment and the 2020 recovery rebate credit, visit IRS.gov/EIP. There's a link to that here. Starting next week, people can check the status of their payment at IRS.gov/mypayment. There's a link to that here. And for other COVID-19 related tax relief, you can visit IRS.gov/coronavirus. And there's a link to that here. There'll be a link to this in the description.